On a warm summer evening in a suburban neighborhood of Atlanta, Georgia, the gentle breeze rustled through the leaves of the oak trees, creating a soothing melody. At a small table on the patio, Sarah, the mother-in-law, sipped her tea quietly, enjoying the tranquility of the moment. Just then, the door swung open, and her son-in-law, Jake, stepped in. He looked weary from a long day at work, but a peaceful smile graced his face as he entered. Their eyes met, and in that instant, an unspoken connection flickered between them, a spark igniting something that had long been buried beneath layers of family dynamics. Sarah, aware that her youth had faded, felt a strange sense of vitality in Jake's gaze, as if she were still a woman with desires and dreams. Jake loved his wife, but lately, he had sensed a warmth in Sarah's eyes that was both familiar and forbidden. That evening, as they sat in the garden, the lingering glances stretched on, each moment thick with unacknowledged feelings. The steam from Sarah's tea curled into the air, mingling with the tension that hung between them. After a brief silence, Sarah parted her lips, as if to speak, and then softly said, "You look tired. Come sit." Her voice was unexpectedly gentle, almost inviting. Jake took a seat beside her, the distance between them mere inches, yet it felt like an insurmountable chasm. In that moment, they both pondered the same question: should they bridge this gap, or keep their feelings hidden forever? Sarah placed her hands on the table, and Jake instinctively reached out, only to pull back at the last moment, his heart racing. That touch could lead them down a path from which there was no return. Yet, even the withdrawal intensified their bond. They both knew that hiding their feelings was no longer an option. As the night deepened, the house fell silent around them. When they finally stepped inside, it felt as if they were the only two people left in the world. The television flickered in the background, but neither paid it any mind. In the kitchen, Sarah prepared a plate of food, her movements graceful and deliberate. Jake watched her from a distance, noticing the weariness in her shoulders and the elegance in her every action. This small moment stirred something profound within him. As they shared the meal, their eyes locked, and words failed them, the silence spoke volumes. Jake's inner voice questioned, "Is this real?" Sarah listened to her heart, which already knew the answer. Later that night, when they retreated to their respective rooms, both lay awake, unable to sleep. Just a few steps away, a forbidden longing beckoned them. They closed their eyes, yet both envisioned the same dream, standing side by side, touching, but lacking the courage to voice it. The silence between them was deafening. Morning light filtered through the curtains, and Jake woke early, preparing for work. Sarah was in the kitchen, making breakfast. When their eyes met, the tension returned, but this time Jake lowered his head, a shy smile creeping onto his lips. Sarah mirrored his smile, and in that moment, they both understood that nothing would ever be the same again. To the outside world, they appeared to be just another ordinary family, but inside, a storm was brewing. As Jake drove to work that day, his heart was heavy with a decision. Would he fight these feelings or embrace them, losing himself in Sarah's gaze? Alone in the kitchen, Sarah caught her reflection in the mirror. The lines on her face told stories of years gone by, yet her eyes sparkled with a new light, one not of youth, but of a powerful, forbidden love. That day, they both realized the true danger was not what others might discover, but the inability to escape their own hearts. As the days passed, their connection became increasingly evident. It was as if they were dancing around a fire, drawn to its warmth yet fearful of the flames. Each shared glance, every accidental brush of hands, only deepened the unspoken bond between them, making it harder to ignore the truth that lay beneath the surface. The tension between Jake and Sarah lingered in the air like the scent of fresh coffee, unspoken yet palpable. Each glance exchanged and every silent smile felt like a continuation of the day before, yet nothing was explicitly said. Jake, the son-in-law, and Sarah, his mother-in-law, navigated their days with a delicate balance of normalcy, while the world outside continued its routine. Their daughter was at school, and the house often fell into a quiet that only amplified the tension simmering between them. Sometimes they found themselves in the same room, deliberately avoiding each other's gaze. Yet, whenever their eyes met, their hearts raced, a silent acknowledgement of the bond that was forming. One rainy afternoon, the two were alone in the house. The sky was a dull gray, and raindrops tapped rhythmically against the windows. Sarah had lit the fireplace, filling the living room with warmth. When Jake entered, droplets of water clung to his hair, and he shook them off like a dog, removing his damp shirt before settling by the fire. "Here, take this," Sarah said, handing him a towel. The moment their hands brushed against each other, both felt a jolt, a spark igniting the unacknowledged feelings they had been trying to suppress. "You'll catch a cold like this," she remarked, her voice light, but her eyes were serious. Jake lowered his head, a shy smile creeping onto his lips. "I'm fine, the warmth is enough for me," he replied, the words carrying a double meaning that hung in the air between them. That moment stretched on, seconds feeling like minutes as they held each other's gaze. For the first time, Sarah didn't look away, and Jake didn't retreat. The emotions that had been building inside him were becoming harder to ignore. "I'll make some coffee," Sarah finally said, breaking the spell. She stood up, her hands trembling slightly as she reached for the coffee pot. The chaos within her was spilling over, and she caught her reflection in the kitchen mirror. "What are you doing?" she whispered to herself, but her heart urged her to embrace the moment. "Live once, just once," it seemed to say. As she brought the steaming mugs back to the living room, Jake's eyes were on her hands, watching the delicate way her fingers wrapped around the cups. It was as if she was performing a dance, and he was captivated. She set the mugs down beside him, and he murmured a quiet thank you, his voice thick with emotion, as if something had lodged in his throat. They began to talk, starting with small talk about the weather before diving into memories. Sarah shared stories of her youth, her old loves, and Jake listened, admiration shining in his eyes. "You must have been beautiful back then," he said, and Sarah laughed, the sound warm and inviting. "Time changes everyone, but in this moment, I can still see traces of youth in your smile," she replied, her gaze lingering on his lips. As their conversation deepened, the atmosphere thickened with unspoken words. Suddenly, Jake asked, "Have you ever regretted anything?" Sarah's eyes flickered away, a shadow crossing her face. "I have, but for some things, it's too late." Jake nodded, his heart heavy. "Some things may still not be too late," he said softly. The words hung in the air, heavy with meaning, and neither dared to continue. In the days that followed, their relationship shifted. The distance between them remained, but it felt like the space between two people walking side by side, not miles apart. When they crossed paths in the kitchen, their hands brushed lightly, igniting sparks of connection. Conversations grew longer, moving from mundane topics to deeper discussions about feelings, longing, and loneliness. One morning, Jake woke early, preparing breakfast when Sarah entered the kitchen. She wore a soft robe, her hair tousled, and the remnants of sleep still lingered in her eyes, yet there was a sense of peace about her. "Let me make you some tea," she offered, taking a seat at the table. She looked at him, her gaze steady. "It's been years since someone made me tea in this house." In that moment, silence enveloped them, thick with understanding and unspoken promises. Later that afternoon, their daughter called, announcing she would be away on a business trip for a few days. Sarah paused, her heart racing at the thought of being alone with Jake, the thrill of possibility mingling with a hint of fear. The evening air was thick with an unspoken tension as Jake and Sarah exchanged glances, their hearts racing with the weight of the news they had just received. The house was quiet, the children tucked away in their rooms, leaving the two of them alone in the dimly lit kitchen. Sarah was stirring a pot of soup, the aroma filling the space with warmth. Jake stepped inside, his presence filling the doorway. "Need a hand?" he offered, a casual tone masking the intensity of the moment. "Chop some onions if you don't mind," she replied, a smile breaking through her initial seriousness. As he moved closer, their shoulders brushed against each other, a spark igniting in the air between them. Jake turned his head slightly, stealing a glance at Sarah. A few strands of silver threaded through her hair caught the light, and in that moment, she looked more beautiful than ever. When the soup was ready, they settled at the table, the silence stretching comfortably between them. Jake reached out, his fingers grazing Sarah's hand. This time, he didn't pull away. Their eyes locked, and the world around them faded. "This feels wrong," Sarah whispered, her voice barely above a breath. Jake didn't respond, but he didn't let go either. "Sometimes the things that feel wrong are the most right," he said softly, the weight of his words hanging in the air. That night, they both dreamed of a large house with a quiet garden, a table set for two. In the dream, every time they touched, a wave of peace washed over them. When morning came, they awoke without speaking, but the bond between them had transcended words. As days turned into weeks, their secret grew deeper, their glances bolder, and their touches lingered longer. Yet, beneath the surface, fear simmered. One evening, Jake gathered his courage. "We can't keep doing this," he said, his voice steady but filled with uncertainty. "I know," Sarah replied, her heart racing. "But I can't imagine being apart." Their hearts were already intertwined, and thus began a dangerous game, each day bringing them closer, yet each moment tinged with the fear of discovery. Outside, winter was creeping in, the wind howling against the windows, deepening the silence within the house. The trees swayed violently in the storm, branches clashing against one another, but inside, a different world existed. Every moment they shared was charged with a silent but intense emotion. Everything was hidden in their glances, in the way they set the table, or how they adjusted a dish. It became increasingly difficult to hide their feelings, as their connection was no longer just in their hearts, it was etched into their very beings. On a night when their daughter was away, they found themselves sharing a moment that felt different. Their eyes met, and this time, their hands lingered longer than before. Lips brushed together, perhaps unintentionally, but the intimacy was undeniable. Everything was slow, careful, yet profound. As Sarah rested her head on Jake's shoulder, she felt like just a woman, not a mother or a forbidden figure. That night, they fell asleep on the couch, wrapped in each other's warmth. When the sun peeked through the curtains the next morning, they lay there, listening to each other's breaths. Jake's mind raced with one thought: how could he sustain this? Every day, their feelings grew stronger, but so did the dangers surrounding them. One afternoon, a child burst into the room unexpectedly, and their eyes met in a moment of panic. They quickly turned away, but the child hesitated, sensing something amiss. Did they suspect, or were they merely caught up in their own game? From that moment on, everything became more cautious. Every step was taken with care, yet the thrill of living in secrecy only heightened their emotions. Each time Sarah looked in the mirror, she felt a rush of youth, a reminder of the woman she had almost forgotten she was. One morning, as Jake came down for breakfast, she smiled at him and whispered, "This kitchen has never felt so alive since you've been here." Jake didn't respond, but the warmth of her words lingered in the air, a promise of what was yet to come. The kitchen was filled with the warm glow of the late afternoon sun, casting a golden hue over everything it touched. Sarah leaned against the counter, her hair cascading down her shoulders, and looked at Jake with a softness in her eyes. The light in this kitchen comes from you, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. But that day, their daughter had returned home early, shattering the moment. The sudden sound of the back door creaking open sent a jolt of panic through them. Sarah quickly stepped back, her heart racing. Jake turned away, trying to compose himself. When their daughter walked into the kitchen, she found her mother washing her hands while Jake was slicing bread. The slight flush on their faces was impossible to hide. Their daughter paused, her brow furrowing. "What's going on with you two? Did you have a fight?" she asked, her tone light but curious. Sarah smiled, trying to deflect. "No, sweetheart, I'm just a bit tired." But in that moment, both Jake and Sarah understood the fragile nature of their secret. They had to be more careful now. One hint of suspicion could unravel everything. From that day forward, they maintained a cautious distance. During the day, they avoided each other, but at night, when they retreated to their rooms, they found themselves wrestling with the same emotions in silence, their eyes meeting in the dim light, filled with unspoken words. Jake felt a gnawing ache inside him. He loved his wife, but the warmth that once existed between them had faded. What he shared with Sarah was more than just passion, it was a sense of connection, a feeling of completeness. With her, he felt like a man, understood and accepted. One evening, when his wife turned to him and said, "You've been so distant lately," he struggled to find the right words. "Work stress," he replied, but inside, a storm was brewing. Sarah was fighting her own internal battle. She was both a mother and a woman, her heart torn in two. Each night, while her mind urged her to turn back from this wrong path, her heart silently ached for Jake's presence. Finally, one evening, Sarah couldn't hold back any longer. She called Jake into the kitchen. "This can't go on," she said, her voice steady but her eyes betraying her emotions. Jake met her gaze, searching for answers. "What do we do? Go back to how things were? I can't go a single day without talking to you." Sarah closed her eyes, feeling the weight of her choices. "I know. But every time I see my daughter, my heart breaks." Jake bowed his head, the silence stretching between them. "I choose you," he said softly, the words both a balm and a wound. "I didn't want this to happen. It all unfolded slowly, but not a moment goes by that I don't think of you." Tears welled in Sarah's eyes. They both fell silent, but they knew this silence wasn't a decision, it was merely a postponement. The heart could not be silenced. From that day on, their relationship shifted. It became less physical but more emotional. They no longer touched, yet they gazed at each other for long moments, their feelings conveyed through their eyes. Then, one day, an unexpected turn of events shook their world. Their daughter announced she needed to go to the hospital for some tests. Her tone was serious, and Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. "What's wrong?" Sarah asked, her heart racing. Their daughter paused, her expression unreadable. "Nothing is certain yet, but I might need some treatment." In that moment, the weight of their love, guilt, and passion was overshadowed by the harsh reality of life. They had to set aside their feelings, for now, life demanded sacrifice. Jake began to be by his wife's side more, supporting her through this difficult time. Sarah was there for her daughter every step of the way, but a hidden grief lingered in both of them. One night, after returning from the hospital, Jake sat alone in the kitchen, lost in thought. Sarah approached him quietly. "Are you okay?" she asked gently. Jake didn't respond, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. She reached out and touched his shoulder, and in that moment, they both understood without words. But that night changed everything. Their love had transformed from a choice into a farewell. Yet, perhaps this farewell wasn't the end, maybe it was just a pause, a waiting game for a future that could hold promise. Months passed, winter chased away by spring. Time moved slowly within the house, but everything had changed. After their daughter received her diagnosis, the treatment process began. Jake was there every day, offering his support, while Sarah remained steadfast by her daughter's side. Part 1. In a cozy suburban home in Portland, Oregon, the atmosphere was thick with unspoken words and lingering glances. Sarah, a dedicated mother, had been holding her daughter's hand tightly, her heart heavy with worry. The family had been through a whirlwind of emotions since the day their daughter, Lily, announced she needed to go to the hospital for tests. The seriousness in her voice had sent chills down Sarah's spine, and now, every moment felt like a fragile thread holding them together. "What's wrong, sweetheart?" Sarah had asked, her voice trembling. Lily paused, her expression unreadable. "Nothing is certain yet, but I might need some treatment." The weight of those words hung in the air, overshadowing the love and warmth that usually filled their home. It was a stark reminder that life sometimes demanded sacrifices that felt too heavy to bear. Jake, Sarah's husband, had been trying to be the rock for both his wife and daughter. He spent more time at home, supporting Sarah through the emotional turmoil, while Sarah remained steadfast by Lily's side. The house, once filled with laughter and joy, now echoed with silence and worry. One evening, after returning from yet another hospital visit, Jake found himself sitting alone in the kitchen, lost in thought. "Are you okay?" Sarah asked gently, approaching him with concern. Jake didn't respond, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. She reached out, touching his shoulder, and in that moment, they both understood without words. The love they had for each other was still there, but it had transformed into something bittersweet, a farewell of sorts. They were caught in a waiting game, hoping for a future that could hold promise. As the months passed, winter melted into spring, and the world outside began to bloom. Inside their home, however, time felt stagnant. After Lily received her diagnosis, the treatment process began. Jake was there every day, offering his unwavering support, while Sarah remained a constant presence by her daughter's side. Part 2. The days turned into weeks, and the family adjusted to their new reality. Sarah and Jake continued their routine, preparing breakfast together each morning and tidying up the house in the evenings. There was a silent agreement between them, a mutual understanding that they had to keep their emotions in check for the sake of their daughter. They appeared to be distant, yet their hearts remained intertwined, bound by love and concern. One night, after Lily returned home from a particularly exhausting treatment session, she collapsed onto the couch, her eyes heavy with fatigue. "I'm so lucky to have such a wonderful family," she murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. That simple statement pierced through the silence, striking a chord deep within Jake and Sarah. In that moment, they both realized the burden their love had become, a weight they could no longer carry without feeling guilty. Jake didn't go to Sarah's room that night. It wasn't that he didn't want to, it was that he couldn't bring himself to face the truth of their situation. The next day, Lily brought home the results of her latest tests. The news was promising, for now, the illness had paused. A collective sigh of relief filled the house, and laughter returned for the first time in what felt like ages. The atmosphere was jubilant, a stark contrast to the tension that had gripped them for months. That evening, Sarah stepped outside into the garden, the moonlight casting a gentle glow on the stones beneath her feet. She wrapped a shawl around her shoulders and took a seat on the porch swing. Jake joined her quietly, his presence a comforting weight beside her. "Good news, right?" he said, attempting to break the silence. "Very good," Sarah replied, her voice soft but strained. "But everything has changed," she continued, her heart heavy. "I can't even think about touching you anymore." My focus has to be on Lily. Jake fell silent, his eyes welling up with tears. I'll never forget you, he said, his voice thick with emotion. But you're right. This has to end here. Part 3. Sarah looked at him, a bittersweet smile crossing her lips. It never really started, did it? We just fell silent, and everything we didn't say turned into something beautiful yet painful. But that love must be stronger than us now, Jake replied, bowing his head. I loved you, Sarah admitted, but sometimes love means letting go. The silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken feelings. Finally, Sarah stood up, adjusting her shawl. I think I need to go to my family's old house for a while. I need to clear my head. Jake didn't respond, his heart aching at the thought of her leaving. That night, Sarah packed her things quietly, not wanting to disturb anyone. I just need to be away for a bit, she said softly to Lily, who was too tired to question her mother's decision. The next morning, as Sarah stood at the door to say goodbye, Jake kept his distance, only glancing at her from the corner of his eye. She took one last look at him, and in that glance, there were years of unspoken emotions, pain, passion, longing, and acceptance. As she boarded the bus, she turned to see him standing there, his eyes glistening but his expression unreadable. Days turned into weeks, and Sarah found herself living alone in her family's old house in a quiet town outside Portland. The stillness was both comforting and lonely. She often reminisced about the past, about the love she had shared with Jake, and the moments that had brought them together. Yet, deep down, she knew she had made the right choice. Part 4. One day, a letter arrived in her mailbox. It was from Jake. Every morning when I wake up, I think of you, he wrote. I'm trying not to write to you, but today I couldn't help it. Because I still love you. I can't promise anything, but I wanted you to know that there's a place in my heart that's only filled with thoughts of you. Sarah folded the letter, closing her eyes as she took in his words. She grabbed a piece of paper and began to write back, but only 2 words came to mind, me too. She didn't send it, unsure if she should. Years passed, and life continued to unfold. One day, at a family wedding, Sarah and Jake found themselves face to face once more. They had both aged, their hair touched with gray, but the spark in their eyes remained. As they navigated through the crowd, their gazes met, and they exchanged a subtle nod of acknowledgement. Part 5. In that moment, they both understood that some loves are not meant to be lived out loud but carried quietly in the heart. They continued on their separate paths, each holding a piece of the other within them. As the wedding festivities continued, laughter and joy filled the air, but for Sarah and Jake, it was a bittersweet reminder of what could have been. They moved through the crowd, each lost in their own thoughts, yet connected by the invisible thread of their shared history. Later that evening, as the sun set and the stars began to twinkle in the sky, Sarah stepped outside for a breath of fresh air. She leaned against the railing, reflecting on the journey that had brought her here. Love, she realized, sometimes doesn't need to be spoken. It can simply exist, quietly enduring through the years. Jake joined her, standing a respectful distance away. It's beautiful out here, he said, breaking the silence. Yeah, it really is, Sarah replied, her heart swelling with nostalgia. They shared a moment of comfortable silence, each lost in their own memories. I'll always care about you, Jake said softly. Me too, Sarah whispered, a smile gracing her lips as she turned to look at him. As they stood there, the weight of their past settled around them like a warm blanket. They knew that while their paths had diverged, the love they had shared would always remain a cherished part of their lives. And with that understanding, they continued on, carrying their love quietly, letting it live on in their hearts, knowing that some loves are meant to be held in silence, forever. Subscribe to the channel. Many